Hey guys, welcome to the Neo Vampiro podcast. I am your host, Neo Vampiro. How's everybody doing today? I know I've been gone for a while, and today we're going to continue my franchise story, this time on Metal Gear 4 Guns of Patriots, that came down on June 12th, 2008 for the PlayStation 3. I feel like it should have been released for the PlayStation 4. But as you guys know, almost any and all games that was made on the PlayStation 3 was solely made for the architecture that was specifically made for the PS3. So it was very hard to port games from PS3 into the PS4, being that they had two different architectures. Now, the architecture from the PS4 to the PS5 is very similar. That's why they're easy to port over. So I want to talk about the beautiful masterpiece, in my opinion, which was Metal Gear 4 Guns of Patriots, predating back the Trophy Edition. Before we had trophies in any game, I feel like that was the game to start it. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not going to sit here and say that Metal Gear 4 was the birth of trophies. No. Not gonna say that, because that's not true. In PS3, there were trophies that started the whole trophy achievement bit, because I have to admit, ever since the Xbox 360, even though this is a PlayStation podcast, this is also a gaming podcast. Ever since the Xbox 360, they started the whole achievement trophy bit, which made Sony come out with their whole trophy system and started with their PlayStation 3. In some PlayStation 2 games, in some of them, they did remake them a little bit to add trophies, like Indigo Prophecy. If you go back now and play Indigo Prophecy, there's a trophy list added to that. Because in the original Indigo Prophecy, there is no trophy. But like I mentioned, the beautiful masterpiece of Metal Gear 4 Guns of Patriots, that was created by Konami, Okojima and his team before they got disbanded after Metal Gear 5. That was supposed to be the swan song, the send-off of Okojima. In this game, you hear the intro, "War has changed," like a few times. You heard that intro, war has changed, to where Snake has already gotten older. He's aged through accelerated aging. At first, we wonder why he's looking like an elderly man in his new sneaking suit that's stealth camo. And he looks to be like over, I would say, over the Middle East. And this is where we get to find out about SOP and the nanomachines. It was crazy. You actually had the walking battle tank geckos, which kind of hinted that way from Metal Gear 2 Sons of Liberty, where you already had Metal Gear Ray units walking on legs. Metal Gear Rex from Metal Gear 1 was the first one to do that, actually, where Rex was walking on two legs. The Shadowhog was still a rotating vehicle base of a Shadowhog Metal Gear, where Metal Gear Rex and Ray are the two first Metal Gears to be standing up, and the geckos just personified it. The graphics in the PS3 architecture was amazingly done. You could tell it showed the power of the PlayStation 3 back at its time, and everything was crisp. It was on Blu-ray. That's when we got first introduced into Blu-ray disc, because every PS3, as well as every PS4 and every PS5, has a Blu-ray built in. Even though with the PS5, they got Ultra Blu-rays built in, because unfortunately, HDs did not make it, and Toshiba had conceded the war on the media battle. So Sony won. Xbox took the loss on that. In Metal Gear 4, there is no pause the game system difference to there's a codec system. Now, you can still pause the game, but the codec is just HAL, and HAL is one and done. He gives you info, he saves your game, and because through the Mark II, or as us fans call Mini Gecko, he brings you what he needs, what Snake needs. And along the way, you meet Drebin, which, if you played Metal Gear 5 after Metal Gear 4 Guns of Patriots, you get to meet Drebin as a child when you're playing as Big Boss. So the timeline jumps from Solid Snake back to Big Boss when Big Boss is revamping his mother base from the Peace Walker era of the PS2, which was also on the PSP originally. Hello, Metal Gear Acid. So by this time, Metal Gear 4 Guns of Patriots, Drebin is older. He's a helper in helping you acquire in weapons and modifications. Plus, he gives you another shot in the neck to suppress the old nanomachines from the Metal Gear 1 era, and slips in the old new / Fox D. Not gonna say the whole word because media is so sensitive today. So with the new Fox D, or the second version of it, it allows you to control your weapons without the nanomachines interfering, or rather frees you from the system. And Drebin's prices are pretty high, or they were in the game. As the game progressed, and when you got to the end, they got dramatically low. Sort of like the economy crash of Metal Gear. But I can say a lot of stuff about Metal Gear 4 that was nice. The fact that Snake had gotten older, which means all of us Metal Gear fans from the MSX days to the Super NES's, we've been hard battle veterans of Metal Gear. So for us to have Metal Gear 4 showing Snake as he's getting to the point where he's about done, it's time for a new generation of sneaking games and espionage to come into play. Are we going to get that? I don't know, because the way the espionage sneaking tactical games have been lately, it's been like an afterthought. And you can see a little evidence of that after Splinter Cell. Look what happened to Sci-Fi Filter. After 2007, 2009, the game kind of went obscurity with Gabriel. Sam Fisher, after Michael Ironside did not reprise the role due to medical issues, which he's now gotten better with, and his health. He's made little cameos here and there with Wildlands and Rainbow Six, but he hasn't had a solid entry game. So Snake, it was like the last one. And at the ending of Metal Gear 4, Snake was done, because by that point he had already stopped the Liquid by rescuing Naomi, and Naomi gets recaptured and goes back with Vamp, which I gotta talk about that. To me, the characters in this game, compared to Metal Gear 2, which introduced D-Cell with Vamp, Fortune, Fat Man, George Sears, the video game ex-president of the United States in Metal Gear 2, which is known Solid Snake. Those are some characters. And Vamp was like the only mystical character that stood out from the group, besides Fortune, because we all thought she can stop projectiles coming at her. And at one point at the end of the game she did, which we all led to believe she could, because she was known as Lady Luck. So after that, D-Cell is gone, Fat Man's been taken care of, the president has become comatose in a video game. You know, Solid as Snake, George Sears, and Vamp was the only one left, even though we haven't seen him since the Island of Manhattan. So we see Vamp in Metal Gear 4. He's pretty much guarding Naomi, or sort of like in love with Naomi, or Naomi is in love with him. It makes us think that he's truly immortal, but you can see the battle scar signs in him that took a toll on him, because in Metal Gear 2, his skin was a lot better condition. In Metal Gear 4, he been through it. He been through it. It kind of makes you feel like this is the one and done, because you can see it in Vamp. You can see it in the Asa Liquid, which is made up of Ocelot and Liquid as a double ganger, as a psychological double. So it's made to feel like this is it. This is the conclusion. Hence the title scene where you see, which makes no sense to me, Snake in a cemetery of, let's call it his Metal Gear ancestors, saluting a person that he never met, which was the boss, the legendary boss. And right beside the boss is Ocelot's father, the Sorrow. Ocelot is the son of the female boss and the Sorrow, which is his father. We're not sure to know if Ocelot ever knew that the Sorrow was his father. It was never really mentioned at all. Maybe slightly hinted if you watch the dialogue between them two, that it might have been a mother-son thing, but it has never been outright said. So for Snake, David Hayter, to be saluting the boss and all the other compatriots that came before him, kind of felt like, what was you saluting for? Out of respect, because you got a renewed sense of duty, or because you feel like now that your war is over and about to be over, you're about to join the long line of what started this war. Because you see a flashback of him doing it, mimicking Big Boss, his father, doing it. But when Big Boss did it, he was paying homage to his mentor, which at the time he was kind of angry for, because he was trying to figure out, why did she give up the fight to say she surrendered? It wasn't until later on, much later on in Metal Gear 4, where you see Big Boss and Solid Snake, as old as they are, meet in the family Metal Gear cemetery. And Big Boss finally understands what it means to put down the weapon. It took him a long time and 2 Okomas to realize that. So Okajima's attempt in writing a story was to tie in all the loose ends, which didn't do that great. Because one, you had Roy Campbell, Paul Langley reprising his role. Christopher, I forgot his last name, that plays Hal Emmerich. You should have brought back the guy that played Liquid's voice, just to do the voiceover of Liquid instead of just straight up Ocelot. It was better when the two voices went back and forth, but I guess they didn't want to pay the extra money. And then you had the female that played Dr. Naomi Hunter. Even though she lost her accent, because in the very first Metal Gear she had an accent, and then in the Metal Gear 4 she had no accent. Mara was played by the same voice actor, so they did a lot to bring back the actors and actresses from Metal Gear 2 and 1. Just that I felt like it could have been tied up better, because the set piece where we go back to Shadow Moses, which was beautifully done, it was shown that the island was sinking a little bit of Alaska because the water is rising and global warming, and the base has been through it. But as you're going through certain stages of Shadow Moses, there was a lot of cut content stage in that game that was missing. Like, to get to Rex's to where Rex was at, it was like 2 turns in a right and you was done. You was already there. When back in the original game, you had to take 3 turns on the left, take 2 elevators down, go through the heating furnace and the permafrost where you left Raven to get to Metal Gear Rex, sorry. Metal Gear Rex's housing unit. But you can still see the damage wall where Gray Fox got plummeted. So they kept that in there, which I thought that was cool. So, for Vamp to be in Metal Gear 4 and to be in Shadow Moses, I felt like he was there because they needed someone big and iconic to face Solid Snake. So, do I feel like Vamp should have been there? Yeah, because the fight between him and Raiden, as the 2 scout fights go off, I felt like we should have controlled, as a player, we should have controlled that fight more than Snake fighting the S-Geckos. And it was hard because on one hand, you're trying to fight the S-Geckos from killing you, and then in the corner of eye, you're just watching Vamp and Raiden go at it, just straight up blade fighting, which I thought that was a straight up nice fight, but I wish we had controlled that. I wish that they would have added in the game, like in some remaster release, like they did with Metal Gear HD, where you can play the missions of Snake, Iroquois Piston, even though he's got no voice writing in it, but you could see on Snake's side of things where Snake went through to get to the oil fence and to get to the plant and Strat H and all that. So I wish we had seen what Raiden had went through before Raiden had made his appearance. I feel like in that game the writing was a little rushed in certain places, like it was in Shadow Moses. It wasn't as deeply detailed. It was heavily used by the geckos in that sense, and I feel like that was a more easier way for them to do that, where you could have had soldiers put outside, even though they try to recreate the Sniper Wolf moniker from Metal Gear 1 with Cyborg Wolf. It wasn't the same, because take out the soldiers that was trying to assist and distract you, it was an easy takedown. You know, even though it was nice little callback moments and paying homages to Metal Gear 1, which again, it was a symbolization of this is it. This is the end of the Metal Gear saga. Which kind of was, because even with Metal Gear 5, which was more like a prequel, a severe prequel, because you got to wake up, supposedly you get to wake up as what happened after Metal Gear Peace Walker, where Mother Base has been attacked and destroyed, and you find out the whole thing was a setup, and Huey Emmerich is the culprit of being the one that set up everything. It was a big callback from Metal Gear 4 to where it all begins again type thing. And they tried so hard in Metal Gear 4 to tie up all the loose ends. Like, you meet Eva after Metal Gear 3 like 10-15 years later, and you find out that she's your mother. She's Big Mama, the female that birthed all 3 Snakes: Solid, Liquid, and Solid Ice. And Snake's reaction to that was like hardly any reaction. He had more of a reaction of knowing that he fought his father in Zanzibar, was in prison with his dad, or his father knew that was his son, and to find out later on as an aging Snake that you're face to face with the mother that gave you life, or at least carried you, because there were 3 eggs that got implanted in her as she volunteered for it. That's why Raven said in Metal Gear 1, blood from the east flowed through your veins. That's what he meant. Son Snake did not realize that. So, for him to meet his mom, he had like no reaction. It was like, because a little lackluster. Even though she gave a nice exposition on why the Patriots were there and how everything came to be and what was her involvement with all this, because she did mention the philosopher's legacy, which was the financial backing of all the birth of AI. He had more reaction to that, and how every Metal Gear mission game had a reason, rhyme of everything to it. But to no sell on his, you're my mom. So after he finds that out and then thinks that I'm trying to put this in the right context, the person in the van is really Big Boss, which is not a close copy, which was really Solidus. But they didn't know that. He was such a Zack good clone that the system thought that was Big Boss. So where you have this crazy fight where once you're on the bike, you're re-greeted with infinite ammo. Just like Metal Gear 3. Once you're on the bike with Eva, you have infinite ammo. And you're trying to survive that stage fight, because as long as you survive that fight, Eva's in control driving. All you gotta do is just battle your way through it, and then you fight Raven, which is one of the Screaming Beauties, which her fight, Cyber Wolf fight, was kind of lackluster, because even Screaming Mantis was a little bit decent as a boss, even though it was paying homage to Psycho Mantis, and then he makes a reappearance because somehow his personality is implanted into Psycho Mantis. Psycho Mantis' fight was not as bad as the other two. The other two were very lackluster. Decoy Octopus's fight was actually the better fight of all of them, because she actually had a moment where she stood on her own. And I feel like Decoy Octopus was a callback to Metal Gear 1, where Decoy Octopus was really a decoy. He was not the Dupper Chief, but even though he posed as the Dupper Chief, he even drained him out of his own original blood and took his blood into his own. That's why we thought that was the real person. Decoy Octopus from Metal Gear 4 was truly Decoy Octopus, where you had to use your thermals to find out where she was, or look very closely at certain things, because even with her stuff coming, you could still see a sort of an outline shell. That was great. And then the Psycho Mantis was a little better, but Screaming Howling Wolf and Raven, lackluster bosses. Good on attempt though. Raven Beauties, gotta give the actresses that played the role very well. I'll give credit to Okojima, as he's the genius creator of Metal Gear, and I'm a fan of Death Stranding. Haven't played Death Stranding. I think Death Stranding 2 is out or about to be out. I gotta look it up. And I'm a fan of Death Stranding, but you could tell by that time with Metal Gear 4, he was burnt out. Because the writing of certain set pieces were hit and miss. The one for Shadow Moses, sort of like lackluster, and just, well, if you didn't play the first game and, listen and read Nastasho's inquiry, it literally had no meaning to no new player that was playing Metal Gear 4. So the writing could have been better in Metal Gear 4, but it was just a beautifully done game. Did it tie up all the loose ends? No, it didn't, because we don't know what happened to Jack after Metal Gear 2, even though they mentioned in the backstory where he thought he lost his son, Rose had an affair, he became really distant, he had PTSD, and then he just took off for Alaska, and then what he heard from him since until later on Metal Gear 4, where he's a badass cyborg, not the cyborg that he's in Metal Gear Rising Revengeance or Metal Gear Rising, depending on which side you want to go with. He's a badass cyborg to where he's a cocky son of a gun. Unlike Metal Gear Rising, he's just, he went back to being whining Jack, and then at the end he became badass Jack. So they reintroduced Jack. Jack became the ultimate hunter, where Snake was, I'm not a hunter, I don't really do CQC. Which made no sense, because then the final fight between him and his brother, Asa Liquid, Snake became the master of CQC. But he always said, I knew how to do it, I just don't like doing it. I felt like their story between Hal and Snake was supposed to be like this deep meaning brotherhood bond. And someone else said this in a video when I was watching their intake. It did feel sort of like an old married couple more than a brotherhood bond. And they didn't really look out for their health, because all they're doing is eating eggs, and eggs is high cholesterol, which I thought that was funny. And each chicken was named after a snake. Liquid, Solidus, and Snake. And then you got Sunny, which is the daughter of Olga, cooking the eggs and burning the hell out of them, which I thought that was funny. But smart as a whip. Genius. Because she's the one that created Fox Alive in Metal Gear 4. I think if E. Hal's sister would have made it, the AIs in that game would have been crazy. Couple that with Naomi Hunter, couple that with Hal Emmerich, EE, and Sunny. Man, you would have like the ultimate AI. But we're not ready for that yet. Just joking with that one. The mechanics in Metal Gear 4 were very simplistic, to where once you have your stealth camo suit, which is given to you from the start, you can blend into any background as long as your head is not exposed, because your head is the only one that's not perfectly camouflaged until you get the skull cap from Decoy Octopus, and Drebin makes modifications to fit it. It was easier in Metal Gear 4 versus Metal Gear 1 and 2, where you have to hide behind stuff, behind enclosures and boxes, and hope to God that the guards did not notice. And sometimes the guards of that were even dumber than Metal Gear 4 guards, because if the box wasn't close enough that they could walk past it, they'll walk past it. But if you broke that blue cone, they want to see what was in the box. Even though the box trick was perfected in Metal Gear 5, where you had the box up and then you can just slide around with the box or dart out of the box as a surprise attack, which was perfected in Metal Gear 5. All I could say about Metal Gear 4 really was it was a beautiful game as far as set pieces go. The graphics were very tight. The mechanics were simplified about stealthing. Maybe the gun mechanics were too simplified, because as long as you had experience points, you could buy as many guns as you want needlessly and had the ammo for it. Snake was overpowered. The Froggers, which is Liquid's personal unit, was made of females, which I thought that was cool. But really, there really wasn't much fight to them. The Metal Gear 2 and 3 and Peace Walker were better output fights than Metal Gear 4. It was just a beautifully done game. I wish that game could get re-released on the newer console, like Metal Gear, like PS4. But since the architecture was solely based on the CPU that was made by IBM and two other subsidiary companies by Ken Guragi, that it was just too different. In the beginning of the PS4 life cycle, in the very beginning, you could download and play Metal Gear 4, but then like a couple of months after that, it was gone. So the only way to do that now is through computer emulation, or if you have a strong console, you can emulate the game as long as you have a strong enough system, because a lot of Raspberry Pis can do emulations, but they have a hard time doing PS3 emulations because you need a strong system and a graphics card to do that. That's the only other way you can do it. There are people out there working on PS3 and PS4 emulations that can do the job pretty easy. Sony doesn't want to go there, but that's their decision. My name's Neo, and that's just my opinion. I think Sony could bring back Metal Gear 4 and add it, since they own the rights to Konami and it's a Sony game. They should bring back the Metal Gear collection and re-release it and call it the true Metal Gear Legacy. If they want to add the bomb crap of a game, Metal Gear Survive, they could do that, even though I never owned it. I bypassed it. To me, it's just a sloppy recopy of Metal Gear 5 assets thrown in together with Metal Gear, the name, and makes no sense. You're some alternate universe that got sucked through wormholes, even though we created the wormholes as a player in Metal Gear 5 in the PS4 Xbox console lifecycle, where with enough time and resources you can make the transporting portals to transport stuff back to your mother base, versus the Fulton system. In Metal Gear 4, if you wanted to bring something back to base, all you had to do was just grab it and it was already dropped off in the airplane. No special trickery, no Fulton, no whatever you don't need, we'll just put it right here in the base for you, and then whatever, you could just get it from the menu screen. Very simplistic. I just wish the writing was more to it. Like I said, it was meant to be a tie-over, but it was like really lazy writing. And thinking about it now, I was gonna have a different perspective, saying that Metal Gear was very action-packed, very thrilling. You got to see Akiba Johnny for the first time, really in person. He's still going through bouts of IBS with his stomach, but later on he marries Meryl, and Meryl marries him, whichever you want to go with. And then Akiba becomes the man at the end. And without SLP, the soldiers wasn't as good as they was made out to be, that they was really controlled by the nano machines. I feel like there was just a lot of lazy explanations that were kind of like throwaways. And then the more important fights, like where Snake fights Ocelot, where they have this epic battle, but it was more like a cinematic control fight, because the movement was very limited, and then the big movements were more controlled by computerized timing. It was great. It tied in everything. I just wish they had put more thought into it. As a fan, I loved it in the beginning, back in 2008. Still have high regards for it. That's why they need to re-release it, or just put it through the system and have you emulate it, because Sony can do it. They have the capability to emulate it. If not, at least add it to the PS5 catalog as a streaming download, and have it that way, because it can support the power that it needs. Do I want David Hayter to come back to reprise his role as Snake? I've been hearing that there's a movie going off and on. Yes, Snake is David Hayter. David Hayter is Snake. Keith Sutherland did do a nice job as the boss, even though it should have been Richard Doyle, because that should have been it, because he was the voice actor of Big Boss when Hater ass Snake was face to face. And Metal Gear 5 was a nice game in the beginning, but you could tell it was also rushed because they had ran out of time, which I'm going to talk about later on, either today or tomorrow with Metal Gear 5. And then I'm going to move on to Splinter Cell. But until then, guys, hope you like it. If you want me to add in more details or change this up, let me know in the comments. Hit me up on Instagram with Neo Vampiro Gaming on Instagram. TikTok with Neo Vampiro Gaming on TikTok. And Neo Vampiro Gaming on YouTube. So message me there. Leave comments. Let me know what I'm doing right, wrong, because I take feedbacks all seriously. And without you guys, I wouldn't be here. So have a nice night. See you guys later. Stay safe, stay extreme. For the moment, I'm out of here.